Hello again. This is Pastor Tim Brewer coming to you from Bend and Lomita United Methodist Churches in Central Texas. We've been going through some Bible stories, especially we started a series on parables. Parables are an interesting form that maybe Jesus even created to tell people to get an insight and sometimes to trap people that wouldn't have listened otherwise. Draw them into the story, and before they know it, they're drawing the conclusions that they don't want to draw, but that Jesus is leading them. Today we're going to talk about the prodigal son. The prodigal son is a story about a man who had two sons. That's a typical biblical story, a biblical approach that a lot of people have two sons. Adam and Eve had started out with two sons, and then there was Jacob and Esau, and a number of times it talked about two brothers, Lot and Abraham. So a lot of times it talks about two sons in the Bible, but this man had two sons, and the younger one, got tired of being told what to do. He was tired of being the bottom one on the totem pole. He was tired of being pushed around and made to work hard. And so he decided that he wanted to go out on his own. But he didn't have the means to do that. So he went to his father and said, Father, let me have my part of the inheritance. The older brother got a double share. So that means if there were two brothers, that means the older brother gets 2/3 and the younger brother gets 1/3. So he's already feels like he's getting shortchanged, but he says to his father, I want my inheritance now. In essence, he's saying, Father, I want to act as if you're dead. I want to be free of your control. I want to be out of here. And so he packs up his thing. His father gives him that inheritance. Now, that would be kind of foolish in some respects, because you know what your son's going to do. You've raised him. You know his tendencies. You know that he's going to waste that. But the father also knows that if he holds on to his son, that there'll be resentment and bad feelings and bad relationships all along. So the father agrees to that, and he lets the son have the inheritance, and he goes. He goes to the far country. The far country is not a particular place. It's just when you go and try to get away from all your responsibilities, from all your family, from all your relationships, from all your present life, you want to do something different. So he goes to the far country, and he wastes all his money. He gets a lot of friends because he's buying the drinks. A lot of women like the gifts he's given them. So he has a wild time of it, but the money runs out. He somehow doesn't see ahead of himself, or see that his friends are not really his friends. They're just there for what they can get out of him. And so when he's out of money, they abandon him, and he has nothing. So he has to go to work as a laborer to a man who owns pigs, which is very disgusting to the Jews, because they don't eat bacon, they don't eat ham, because it's an unclean animal. And so your existence depends on you working for a Gentile, a non-Jew, and feeding the pigs, which were disgusting to you. He's reached rock bottom, and he begins to think, I wish that I could just eat the food that the pigs eat. I'd have a better life if I had that. Then one of the great sayings of the Bible is that he came to himself, which means to me that he realized who he really was and where he belonged. It was who he was all along, and he didn't realize it. And so he decides to go back. And he decides to go back on the basis of begging his father to let him be one of the servants. He figures he'd be better off as a servant to his father and his brother, even if it's pretty humiliating and not understandable by the community at large. He's willing to do that just so that he can have some food on the table and that his life can be more secure. So he heads back home. Now, here's where it gets interesting because, the father, when he showed up, the father might say, well, I told you so, or I expected that you to happen. Don't think you can come crawling back in here and have everything okay. But that's not what he does at all. He sees the prodigal son returning from a long ways off, and he lifts up his robe and starts running. Now that's an embarrassing action from an adult male head of household, because one of the reasons they had such long robes was to cover up their legs. Their legs probably never saw any sun with the robes hanging over them, and so he's got these white, pale legs, and he's running down the road, showing them off because he wants to get out of the way so he can run to his son. And the son has his speech prepared. He says, Father, I don't deserve this. And his father cuts him off and said, calls to his servants and said, kill the fatted calf. We're going to have a celebration. We're going to have a feast. We're going to get the best we have and put a robe on him and put a ring on his finger, because that who was lost is now found. That who was dead is now alive. The story could have ended there, and it probably did at some points when Jesus was talking about the people who have gone off and done things that they're not proud of, done things that were forbidden by the Jewish faith, done things that were contrary to the will of God, and to have a loving Father that would receive you back, to have a God who loves you so much that he forgives you and embraces you is a pretty good story. And I imagine that Jesus, depending on his audience, may have stopped the story there, but that's not the end of the story we have in the Bible. We have the story of the older brother. He comes back and he realizes that they're having a party. He doesn't know what's going on, so he asks the servant, what's happening? He said, well, your brother came back. But the older brother refuses to go in. He refuses to celebrate. He refuses to embrace his brother as lost and now found, as dead and now alive. And so the father comes out to try to coax him into the party, and tells him all this. And he says, well, I'm the one who did all the work. I did my duty. You never gave me a party. And so he resents the fact that the lost has come back home. And so at the end of the story, we don't know whether he ever goes back in, whether he accepts the love that his father has given to his brother as being the same love that he has. Now, when Jesus told that part of the story, he was taking a little jab at the Pharisees and the high priests who keep all the rules and put down other people who sin, who violate the will of God and are outsiders. They won't accept them back. And they criticize Jesus for eating with sinners. And Jesus' point is that God's love is for everyone. And so that's why he sought the outsider. He included the excluded. But he was resented by the people of stature, the people of standing as leaders. And so he's saying that don't be the older brother. Don't be the one who can't accept the Father's grace that expands beyond what you think it ought to be. You're not the judge. God is the judge of human beings. And so for those whom God can love, you need to love also. So that's the parable of the Good Samaritan. I hope that's helpful for you, and think about the people that God includes that you might not include, and the love that God has that embraces people that you don't especially like, don't appreciate what they've done. God can embrace them. Okay, I'll see you next time.